This is so important. So everyone has money beliefs that they carry around with them that they will have from childhood. You probably have money beliefs you don't even know about. And a really good way of finding them out is if I said to you, money is, what is the first word that comes into your head? People don't talk about making money enough, but when they do, there is so much to learn. One of my favorite things to do is to ask successful entrepreneurs about how they made money. Most of them have this trail of businesses, jobs, projects in their past that when you hear them talk about their lessons, the challenges that they overcame, the things that they would do the same now if they had their time again, and more importantly, the things that they do differently now if they had their time again, gives so much gold. And so this episode of Chats with Ben is mine and Ben's version of this exact concept. So we are going to talk about the top 10 ways we have made or lost money, including a few ways that you probably wouldn't expect. I really hope you love this episode. We made it just for you, and here it is.
I think this is a really cool topic to be discussing because I've actually never had a real job. But I know that also you had 15, I think, jobs before you were 21 years old. And obviously since then, since we've been working together, we've tried multiple different ventures, business ideas, etc. Some of them have been kind of very active ways of making money, some of them more passive, and some of them scalable, some of them not scalable. Some of them have worked, and some of them worked really well, and some of them haven't quite worked out. And so we thought it'd be cool to talk about some of the ways we've made money and some of the ways we haven't made money, or even lost money on the way to making money and learning lessons, and
lost money on the way to losing money.
Yeah, just continuously lost money. Because I think everything has a lesson, everything's learned. I think we're probably the best positioned now than ever to make good assessments on what can make money, and what we're doing now is one of the more successful things that we've done. And so I think there's some cool lessons to explore. Obviously, it's not going to be every single thing we've ever done, but top 10 ways of making / not making money.
Yeah. So number one, we've got working in a restaurant. So this was me. I worked in a restaurant, in a few different restaurants since I was 16. So I was 16. This was my first ever job. I don't think I was actually legally meant to be working in the restaurant because I was serving alcohol. And in the UK, the age of alcohol is 18. Like you can only buy or have alcohol when you're 18, but I was serving it at 16. So don't know what was going on there, but anyway, it happened. And I remember my hourly wage then was like £3.85 because I was 16. And then they used credit card tips to top you up to the minimum, the kind of next level of minimum wage. And then I would shift work. I think I was doing like 3 or 4 or 5 nights a week. It was pretty cool work. I really enjoyed it. You got to speak to people. You got to be rushed off your feet. You got to have to do a lot of things at the same time, and have to constantly be prioritizing who needs you. And the main route of making money in being a waitress or in hospitality in general was not the hourly rate, not at all. The main way of making money was the tips that you got from customers, tipping like 10, 15, 20% of the bill, sometimes nothing. And so that for me became the game. So in being a waitress, I remember the hourly side of things just was not interesting to me at all, because you just go, you get your £3, £4, £5 an hour, and then that's it. Like you just kind of do it. But the interesting thing was the tips, because if you were good, you could be making like double, triple, quadruple that, maybe more than that. And there's no, like, it felt like a meritocracy, because it was the better I was, the more tips I made. And so the game in that for me was, how can I firstly be really good, but then also how can I play the game of getting tips? And so it would, like, I remember really geeking out on this, and we probably spoke about it quite a lot. And it was things like, if I kind of show, like, it's a couple, if it's a man and woman couple on the date, if I like chatted to the girl quite a lot, I would get more tips because they would kind of warm to me, and then we would almost like make friends. And then at the end of their meal, when they're deciding how much to tip, they just add more. And then there was also this tactic I put in place where when I was handing someone the credit card machine, they get this question, which is, do you want to add a tip? And they have to click yes or no. And that's when, if they click yes, they decide how much they want to add. If they click no, they just enter their PIN and that's it. But I knew that they would, when they had this machine, have to answer a yes or no question. And so I saw it as my job to get them in the pattern of saying yes. So as I handed them the machine, I would be asking them a bunch of questions that meant that their answer was yes. And it was like, when I worked at a restaurant called Las Iguanas in Sheffield, the question was always, oh, are you going anywhere after? Because people were always going somewhere after, because it was just you in the middle of town. They're going to go for a drink after. So it was, are you going anywhere after? Yes. Or did you enjoy your meal? Only if you knew they did. Yes. Are you going to be back again? Yes. Like, you just get them in the habit of yes, 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 yes. Hand them the machine. Do you want to add a tip? Yes. And then invariably they would. So that was quite a fun way to earn money over and above an hourly rate.
Yeah, I mean, and
yes, you did it too.
Yes, I did. I'm compelled to only say yes now. I mean, you were very successful at it. It's very difficult to know exactly what impact that has. I'm sure there's been some studies on it, but I remember when we were at university, you coming home after a busy night, and there was just like so much cash. I was like, this is insane. Like, this is like really, if you were working it out as an hourly rate, I guess if you maybe had a big table that was just out on a big night and they had lots to eat, lots to drink, so the bill was just big, and then they decided to tip 15, 20%, you could have easily, like, I don't know, I guess you could have had like a £200 like tip if there was a big enough group that were just out and spending and just in the mood to be abundant, because maybe it was a holiday period or something. They just finished work for the year or whatever. So yeah, that was super cool. But I mean, the other thing is that you were doing this from so young. Like, you were at school when you started working jobs, and I think this was super interesting because to me it never even like crossed my mind to have a job while I was in education. So that attitude towards work interested me, because I didn't work at all until the second year of university, and I started working as a bouncer, which is not one of the ways of making money, because yes, it had kind of like a slightly elevated hourly rate compared with waitressing or doing other stuff, but there weren't really tips. I mean, you might get offered you'd get offered bribes to get you in front of the queue, but it wasn't any of my business to take that. But then I guess, I only did that for about a year because I was like, well, it's not actually the priority here. The priority is university and education at that part of your life. But you were pretty prolific, I think, until your third year of uni, just like doing all that kind of stuff. But even after university, you continued to do it while you were also on your grad scheme. And I think you've always been driven to make money. And I think that hybrid of like, you're going to get at least something for showing up, but then if you're really, really good at it, you can just get way more. It's like that kind of salesperson on commission attitude. Yeah.
Well, I remember at school, because we went to the same school, and during sixth form, one teacher especially, but I know this was a big push just like school-wide, actually said, we think for every 10 hours you work per week in a part-time job, you'll like drop a grade, you'll drop one grade. And I think I was probably working 30 hours a week. And yeah, I dropped grades, but I didn't care, because I was so aware that education and getting good grades probably didn't matter as much as the real, like, how alive I felt when I was working. And then also, because a big value and driver is just freedom, I just wanted to buy my own car. I wanted to buy my own car that meant I didn't have to catch the bus with everyone else, that meant that I could just take myself away wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I didn't have to ask my mum and dad for lifts because I didn't like doing that. And so that was the main thing. It was like, how can I work as much as possible, be as good as possible? Like, you have to be good to even get the big tables, and it's the big tables who are going to tip you more. And then you have to be good to make the big tables happy so that then you get tips. So I feel like from that job, I got this big sense of input equals output, like again and again and again. It was very rare that someone who had an amazing experience then wouldn't tip. And it was very rare that someone who had a terrible experience would tip. So you get that instant feedback. Next one.
Yeah. So this was straight out of university. I'd done an economics degree. Throughout that entire time, I'd been really into health and fitness, and I kind of ventured into doing a bit of personal training. But the thing that I actually spent most of my time doing in the few years after graduating was working as a model. And like, why? I think, do you know what? It was because when I was at school, we went to a very academic high school, and everyone was always talking about, what are you going to go and study at university? What are you going to do after that? Like, it was very grades and career driven. And I just used to be really bored of the conversation. In sixth form, I was really not interested in the academic side. I was playing rugby, I was playing cricket. I really enjoyed school, but I just didn't enjoy the study of it. And I think maybe it even slightly annoyed me that I knew I was relatively intelligent. I was as smart as the smartest kids, but I wasn't getting the best grades. And I kind of wrote that off as like, I just don't kind of fit into the exam system and whatever. And I just didn't want to ever have to do tons of homework. I didn't want to spend my lunchtime at maths workshop to get better. I was just thought, it's on you as a teacher to make me pass my exam, like I'm smart enough. And obviously that's not the right attitude to have at all. But ultimately, when people were like, come on, Ben, what are you going to do when you're old? And I was just like, I don't know, I'll just be a model or something, because I was just kind of tired of the conversation. It was a really, big ego at the time, as many of us have when we're teenagers. And I was just like, it doesn't matter, I'll be professionally good looking for however long, as I want to. And ultimately, I think it wasn't necessarily to prove people wrong, as the same, when footballers are like, I'm going to be a professional footballer, and everyone tells them, that you're never going to be a professional footballer, like you need to get your studies done. Like, I think there's an element of like proving people wrong, but I think as much of that, it was kind of proving to myself that like, I said that I could do this, like, could I actually do this? And the modeling industry is really kind of, it's quite strange, you kind of are your product. The way you look is your product. But it's kind of similar to a lot of trades, I think. Like, on paper, it should be quite easy to assess, can this person do this job? And ultimately, it comes down to that, like maybe 50% of the time, but a lot of the time it really is, how well do you get on with people, and how well do you advertise yourself? Your portfolio as a model is massively, massively important. That kind of gets your foot in the door. And then when you're at a casting, which is like a kind of model audition, they're really seeing if they like your vibe. Are you going to get on with them? Even more so if it's a shoot over a couple of days, or it's even like you're going away somewhere for a few nights or a week. Do they want to spend time with you, and are they going to get the material they want? And I realized over that period of modeling that, even though it should just be the way you look and it's just your product, and like many other trades, like, I'm a plumber, I'm a whatever, this is the product. It's just not about that. It's really about getting on with people and being with the right agents. And an agent gets a call from someone that says, hey, we're looking for someone that fits the bill, and the agent could say, well, we've got 100 people that match that description. They're gonna suggest the guys and girls that they are in their mind, that think actually they get on with the client, they could do a really good job here. And I met hundreds of models over my time, and the guys that generally did well were the personable ones. And yes, they had good work and they had good photographs, but people just liked them. The agents liked them, the clients liked them. It's amazing how many of the booking clients are they might be like directors, photograph directors, or they're kind of managing the shoots, and they might have multiple clients. So no, you might not get booked by the exact same brand multiple times, but the same agent or person who's doing the campaign might be like, yeah, that guy was really good, really got on with him, another chance to work with them, again. And I worked with the same people kind of multiple times, which was good. Ultimately, it wasn't for me. Like, I didn't invest enough time and effort into it. It was very hard trying to be like a professional model living in Birmingham instead of London. I'd find myself getting up, walking to a train station to get into Birmingham city centre, to then get down to London, to then get on a tube to somewhere fancy to do a casting. And if you start then factoring in the opportunity cost of like getting to a job that you might not even win because you're only going to an audition, that was another learning point there. It's so different from being able to make a sales call and you either get it or you don't. There's no big outlay, especially sometimes jobs where, they're £300 or £400 a day. Ideally, you wouldn't go to a casting for something that was only that, because you might spend half a day getting there. But of course, there are jobs where they pay, thousands of pounds a day, and then you could get thousands of pounds of usage, which is what basically they're going to use the image or footage for, and for how long, and what geographical area, and maybe they want to decide to use it for a third year or a fourth year, and then they pay you more even though you never did anything. So there's huge upsides to it, but it was ultimately not going to work full time unless I probably lived in London, because that's where all the castings happened, and that was not going to happen because Jodie had already started hiring people. We'd got an office for the agency at this point, which we're going to come on to next, I think. So that wasn't really feasible. And there were two things that were really kind of frustrating about it, or two realizations that I had. And one was, my agent would phone up and say, hey, we've got a client that wants to see you. They're really keen. They've seen your book. They're only seeing you and a few other guys. So it'd be really good to meet them. And you'd get on the train and you'd go down to them and you're thinking, cool, I've got a really good opportunity to get work here. It's it could be a big 4-figure job, 5-figure job. And you'd go into the casting room and there would just be a line of like 30 or 40 guys who basically all look the same. And you can tell in there, everyone's just looking at each other thinking, like, how are they even picking us here? And that also comes down to, the photos that you show them, are they good? It also comes down to how well you get on with these people. But literally spending 2.5 hours getting to somewhere where there's generally, maybe a 1 or 2% chance you're going to get this job because there are just so many people there. It was just a massive waste of time. And the thing that I learned from that as well, like there might be originally a casting that was quite small. It was just to one agency's models, and maybe that agency only sent 10. But then one of those models would be friends with someone at a different agency, and they'd say, oh, hey, but by the way, this agency has an exclusive casting at this time, at this date. And then that agency would be like, oh, we should send some of our models along anyway, because the client kind of doesn't mind, because they're like, oh, we've got more to choose from. But that other agency who's trying to like usurp this casting almost, it's just a numbers game for them. So they're just sending people. So this is how you ended up with so many people in the same room.
You just become a commodity almost. It's like you need to, I don't know if you have thoughts on how you do it differently, but you almost have to like become the brand rather than become the commodity.
Yeah, and I think back then as well, there was so little around the brand. It would be completely different today. I imagine when people are booking models, a big part of it is, well, how big are they on Instagram, for example? Because even if they're just sharing like behind the scenes shoots or saying good things about the product, it's a whole extra layer of marketing that these brands want. When I started doing it, this was like 10 years ago, I guess now, it just wasn't relevant. It really was not relevant. It didn't matter how many followers you had on anything. They were going on your pictures and how you were in a casting. So I think you could have built a personal brand back then, but I don't think it would have moved the needle as much as like that would now. So many agencies, you see the models, and it's like as part of their like portfolio almost, it says how many followers they've got on certain platforms in case that's a deciding factor. But I think building a brand and being known as being someone very easy to work with, definitely, that's something I could have definitely worked on more. That
carries through to everything, probably everything that we're going to mention.
Yeah, and I guess to wrap that up, one of the final straws, or one of the final realizations, and this was after Jodie had already started the agency and was starting to grow it, and I could see, oh, you know what, you can make like reliable money not having to go to castings. I went on a job, and it was a really fantastic job. It was a week away in the Caribbean, and it was for a kind of sailing company. But there was a younger group of us, but there was also some older couples. A couple of them, they weren't an actual couple. And the guy there was 75 years old doing the shoot. And it dawned on me there that this guy is going to the same kind of castings that I'm going to. He's still having to earn. He's not creating any kind of assets or something that he can retire on. And sure, he was probably financially completely fine. He's doing it as a bit of a hobby. But I was like, that could be the future. Like, you're just going to keep earning, and unless you build like a kind of mega brand like some models do, it's never going to scale beyond you just going to castings and getting jobs or not and having to go on those jobs. So I think that was kind of like this is a great job, but I can see my future here. what Jodie's doing is more interesting, which was starting an agency.
Yeah, which is number 3 ways that we have made or lost money. This is probably one of the main ways that we've made money. And it started off in a very not grand way at all. It wasn't even, I wouldn't have even called it an agency in the early days. This was me at 22 years old deciding that I was going to be a social media manager. And it was so simple. I didn't even have a business plan. Like, if I had a business plan, it would have been 2 words, and that was just get clients. And I just had this idea that there were going to be companies out there, people out there who wanted me to run their social media accounts for them. And there wasn't much thinking other than I knew that I needed to meet these people and I needed to talk to them and I needed to probably quote them, write a proposal, and then turn them into a client and then charge them a monthly fee for doing that. And so when I advise people now on how to start a company, I say it's really simple. You just need to have one type of client, one offer that you are selling to them, and one channel through which you meet them. And mine was just owners of businesses, which later became marketing managers at businesses as I started to get bigger clients. It was one offer, which was just, I'll run your social media for you. I wasn't really platform specific. It was just all of your social media, I'll do all of it. And then the way I met people was at networking events. And it was very, even though my work was online, the sales side of it was very offline. I would go to networking events, sometimes regular ones with the same group of people who almost become your sales team. And some of them were just one-off events, and it was meet as many people as possible, tell them what I'm doing, and invariably people would come up to me, they would hand me their business card, or they would say, hey, I want to talk to you about this, can you get in touch? And then I would get in touch, and I followed up prolifically afterwards. It was if someone said, hey, I want to talk about this, I would just call them until they answered, and I'd be like, you said you wanted to talk about it, let's talk about it. And that led to quoting them for work, getting people on board as clients. And then because I just had it in my mind that I didn't want to do project work, I didn't want to sign a set project or a set piece of work and then have to keep repitching the same clients for the same work. I was how do I work out a way of charging everyone this monthly price that they just pay forever and ever and ever? The default is that it keeps going. And I don't think everyone was doing that at the time. Lots of different freelancers, agencies, it was okay, this piece of work. But yeah, I wanted to do it quite differently. And maybe that was because a couple of years in, I read the 4-Hour Work Week and we started traveling, and that became let's make this a lifestyle business. But yeah, even before then, it was very much focused on retainer work.
I think just for context here, because this just sounds ridiculously old school. This sounds like it must have been black and white because of the way you're talking about winning business, because there's no way on earth a social media manager or agency owner is winning business like this. But I think what's really important is this was the real early days of social media marketing. It was not established at all. People's genuine thought about Twitter, now X, was that people just posted photos of their lunch or their breakfast. That's what it was.
And they pretty much did.
And so there was just this massive education piece. Yeah. And I don't think at the time these people were not online searching for people to do their social media marketing. It just wasn't a thing. This was going out to meet people to basically convince them, hey, social media actually is valuable for businesses because businesses aren't using this. This was before Facebook ads was even a thing.
Yeah.
You could get so much organic reach. People would talk about Facebook ads. It's you don't need them. You don't need Facebook ads. And it changed while we were running the agency. But back early on, you were basically saying, hey, I know what I'm doing. This could be valuable. And really, they weren't buying into the social media as much as they were buying into you. They were I've got an idea. I can do this. And it was only really the guys that at the time were ahead of the curve that were oh, I can see the benefit of having a thriving Twitter account or Facebook account that my network can start seeing what I'm doing and really understand it and start engaging with the business and making inquiries. It was only a few of those people that were actually there ready to buy. And so it was a kind of just a different world back then, I think. And then so for you to for obviously take the decision, I don't want to just do this as project work, because it would have been really easy to be like, oh, I'll set you up, I'll do the 100 posts, I'll optimize your profiles and then whatever. I think getting people on retainer, it probably made it hard. We also took the decision to charge that retainer up front, which probably made it harder. But I mean, that's how you pay for your gym membership, for example. And that's the kind of analogy, you know, we're not going to do the work for you if you're not paying for it already. We're going to do the work. But I think it was just a very different environment for you to sell. And that education piece is one that's kind of rears its head quite a lot, I think, over the years with us. But you got over it.
Yeah. There was definitely an education piece. We were setting up people's. I keep saying we, even though it was I at the time, but there was something about the whole. Like, I was so aware. I was 22. I looked about 12, and I was so aware that I like wanted to kind of look for it to look bigger. So I would always say we, even though it was I at the start. And so I was going and convincing people to be on social media. I was setting up their accounts. We created some of the first Twitter accounts for Deliveroo, and like big brands who, like, you would think, oh, they must have been on social media forever and ever and ever. It's like, I'm the one who convinced them to do that. And so it was about 6 months in, I had 40 hours a week of client work because I was charging retainers that were based on an hourly rate. And then that's when I had the decision, do I just do this forever and be a freelancer forever, or do I start hiring? And that's when I hired one person. I think that was Jason. I think the first person came like a couple of months after that. That was David, who actually was with the agency when we sold. And then just pretty much every 30 new hours of client work I sold, would just hire another person, keep going for there. And then we had a team of 20 at its peak. So I think that for me, it was like, get in, do the work, learn how to do the work, and then get other people to do the work, and then get really good at the selling. And then it moved to get other people to also do the selling, and then move to kind of the managing. And then it was like, get other people to do the managing, and then move to like the coaching. And I think as a team member coming into a company, like as an employee, you will have that career progression. But as a founder, you don't have the career progression unless you create the career progression for yourself. So I was really like, what's my career ladder looking like? And then what ultimately ended up happening after we built the company on networking was that we discovered Google Ads. Well, Ben kind of discovered Google Ads and SEO as well. Started geeking out on that. Was like, hey, you don't have to go to all these networking events. I've worked out how to use the magic internet to get us new clients. So then we grew faster. And then my role ended up being above and above and above what it was before, to the point where I really didn't run the agency. We had a team. I kind of checked in. I did the stuff around the edges. I did the extra stuff, but the day-to-day, the winning clients, looking after clients, billing clients, everything else was done by other people, which then meant that when we decided to sell, I didn't need to go with the company that bought us to kind of keep everything in check, because there were other people keeping it in check. And so that was quite different to a normal agency exit, where the founder typically has to go with the agency and stay for what's called an earnout. Average agency earnouts are between 3 and 5 years, and mine took 2 weeks, and you were out just before then as well.
Yes.
So we,
you make this sound like it was really easy for you to like get out of the actual doing and into the management role, but I think this took like
10 years.
10 years.
This is over a 10-year period.
It took a 10-year period. There was a few things on there. I mean, hiring people was interesting. It's cool. We hadn't done that before. I say we. It was you to start with.
My mom helped me do the first interview. I was like, I've literally never interviewed people before. I've only been interviewed before. How do I do this? Mom! And then she helped. Yeah,
and it was interesting because we were hiring people about our age. We hired people that were just a bit younger than us. Sometimes they were older than us, and that was kind of an interesting dynamic to be hiring all these people. But I think that agency can be a massive trap, and it was during the years that we were running the agency that we kind of had realized that we tried to be self-employed and create all this freedom, and we actually hadn't got the freedom. I think we'll come back to that in a second. But the thing that I think we find a lot of people end up running an agency like you did, which is just by default. You start winning business and then you realize, oh, I can just keep winning business. Like, I'm amazing. I meet people and they want to give me money. And now, oh, I've got loads of clients. but I don't want to do the work anymore, or I can't do all the work, and I start hiring people. It's like the most obvious way of doing it, especially it was back then. I think now it's possibly slightly different. You can do some things with VA, increasingly, you can do it with AI. But back then, I think there's still a bit of a culture here. It's like, oh, I'm just going to hire people. And there's still a little bit of a legacy kind of kudos to how big your team is. It's like, oh, is it just you? That always used to be like a question, right? Oh, is it just you? And it's like, oh, no, I've got a team of 15. And it's like, oh, wow, you've got a team of 15. Like, you must be successful. You must be good. But it ultimately becomes very difficult to manage people. I think increasingly so with the way that social media is. Managing people, processes, etc., creating those systems that you spoke about. I mean, that was a huge undertaking to systemize an agency. But I think my overall point is, it's so easy to get into agency, and we have so many people that talk to us now. It's like, oh, I'm doing really well at this thing. Like, I'm thinking of starting an agency, and we're like, like, do you really want to start an agency? Because it is not as straightforward as you think.
Yeah,
it's really not that easy, and I think we may have done things differently if we had our time again.
Right now, we'd do things differently. We'd run a completely different agency now with AI. But I remember at the time, people would say, Mike Bandel would say, like, oh, you're the happiest agency owner I know. Like, all other agency owners are stressed. And I think that is the default, because you've got clients coming and going, team members coming and going. Everyone wants to be paid more to do less work. Like, you've just got this. Stuff's just happening all the time, and you kind of have to be used to just riding this roller coaster. And I think lots of agency owners get to the stage where they're yearning for this place, this moment where everything's just settled. And it's like, that never happens. There's always a fire to put out. There's always something to do. There's always something going wrong. And I just always wanted to be at the stage where I'm happy to put out fires, but I want them to be new fires, not the same fire again and again. Because once you put the fire out once, you need to train someone else to put that fire out, and then you progress to the next one. And you have to have that sense of progress. Otherwise, I think you would go a bit crazy as an agency owner.
I think agency owners end up hating the work, hating their team, and hating their clients.
Yeah.
And if it's not one of them, it's all three at any one time. And so you've really got to put those processes in place to just minimize all that. And I think we did pretty well, given it was like completely brand new. We never brought in people to help with like agency experience. But I mean, another big limiting factor for us there was we were so like Birmingham centric. Like, we did expand to national, we did have some international clients, but really it was like, oh, Birmingham's a major European city. Like, this, being the biggest agency in Birmingham would be cool. Like, we'd be doing okay. And that's another element I think we would change. That it was such a local business, and over the years, like, our thoughts on that would have changed.
Yeah, we potentially thought very small for a long time about that. And then once we started being like, oh, there's a big wide world out there, when we started traveling and connecting the dots, that's when things just grew a lot faster. I mean, agencies is quite similar to modeling, actually. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if you do the best work. It matters that you have the best team culture and you are the nicest to your clients and clients like you. It's a people business. They all are.
I think it's worth, because I don't think we've got like actual exit as a separate point. But obviously you mentioned we did have that exit, and with an agency, some people say it's really hard to sell an agency. Obviously the way we packaged it up to sell, it wasn't too difficult. Like, it worked as we expected. There are more saleable options, but I think just to kind of talk about that briefly as a way of making money, some people hate the idea of an exit. Because it's like, hang on, if you've got something that's saleable, it's probably something that's making you money. Why would you kind of sell something like that to like cash in? It's like killing the goose that lays the golden egg, right? You're just taking a lump sum. But it's a very personal decision. And for us, it was like, we know ourselves that, the agency can go on and do bigger and better things under someone else's ownership. But also that we just wanted a new challenge, and we knew that we could put probably the skills that we had by then into something that was different, more interesting, and probably something more scalable.
Yeah, and also the stage in life, like 22 at the start, 32 when thinking about selling. Like, you're a whole different person in those times. In that decade, you've grown so much, and I felt like we've kind of outgrown that business. But lots of agency owners as well talk about selling as if it's this thing that they're going to do someday. But the time when it really happened for us was when we said, no, we are going to sell it. We're going to sell it. This is what we're going to do. And then spoke to a broker who told us the process, said it was going to take about 6 months, and it took 6 months and 2 days. And it was actually a very straightforward process. We had 12 initial meetings with potential buyers. We had 6 second meetings, got 3 offers, and then sold it once. But I think that a really big thing that helped that was having it so systemized already, so that the conversations made a lot of sense. The business was not messy. It was like things were in order. There were processes, there was stuff that happened, and someone could very easily see where it could slot into their business and why they would be buying it. Because the sales process is like, it can be this big black box until you realize that it's just a process.
Yeah, and so ultimately, we made a lot of money while we were running an agency, like for like young, well, you being young person in, your 20s.
It was great. It was a massive cash cow. And then we made a lot of money when we sold it.
Yeah, and I think that what that brings us on to is the ability to explore joint ventures.
I see what you did there.
When we were running the agency, as you do, if you're kind of over the honeymoon period of the agency, we kind of systemized it. It was running itself. It's paying you a certain figure pretty much every single month. Obviously, it's with an agency, it can be ups and downs or whatever, but you like solid income. And you kind of get a little bit like bored, especially, we're pretty entrepreneurial people. It's like, oh, what can we do? And it's really easy to get the kind of shiny object syndrome. And what do you do? And a couple of the things that we did involved partnering up with other people who were like, we kind of align with these people. They also want to make money. We've got spare cash to like put into something that was higher growth. I guess as we were seeing it, the agency model was quite like slow and steady compared to like a massively scalable software company or even something that's just more productized. And we thought, okay, let's try something with people that we like. So it didn't become like a full-time thing for us. There would be other people that we vibed with that had different skills to us to try and grow something. So we started, I guess in total, it was like 3 joint ventures. And I don't think we're going to speak about every single one, but maybe kind of the things that we learned and took for them and how we did and didn't make money from them.
Yeah, high-level learnings from starting joint ventures. Well, it's mainly what you do differently. Yes. Because invariably, joint ventures fail more than they succeed.
100%. I think the biggest top level is like, don't do them. Like, I think that would be our takeaway from that. And I think the primary reason is when you start, everyone can sell the vision to each other, but ultimately it's not going to be as smooth as that. And when things aren't smooth, who's going to pick up the slack? Whose responsibility is it? How are things going to go when someone feels like they're putting in more than the other person or the other partner? And if things go badly, what does that look like? And because it's not always going to look good, it's probably going to be hard. It's not to say joint ventures don't work. There's tons of like co-founders that do really well. But unless I think it's all of yours like full-time thing, I've never really seen it work. Like a side hustle for 2 people or 2 couples, as the way it was for us, has not worked out well.
I think so much of it, and if we were doing this again, I actually wouldn't do it again, because I think that shiny object syndrome kills like potential. I think that joint ventures potentially cost our agency like a lot of growth because it's just time and effort elsewhere. At the time, it was more like wanting to do other stuff. Like you said, it was the fast lane versus slow lane. I think there's a book called The Millionaire Fast Lane. And a friend was just like, you're in a slow lane business. This is a fast lane business. You need to be in a fast lane business. And I think maybe I was just green and naive. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to be in a fast lane business. Not realizing that actually an agency that's growing is a pretty good business and can be sold for like more and more and more. So I think that shiny object syndrome can take you away from your main thing. And now I'm like I don't really think side hustles are a good idea because of that. But the main thing is being so intentional about everyone's expectations at the start, because I think otherwise everyone just has these different expectations of how long they're going to spend on it, how much they're going to put in, when you're going to put in cash compared to when you're going to hire support in, for example. And it's like, imagine if there's like 4 partners, if someone's got the skills, does that mean they have to put the skills in? Or if someone's got the skills, does that mean they can put a freelancer in to do the work? Like all these little nuances, it's so just worth like taking a step back, getting really slow about it and discussing it first. Ours ended like fine because they're friends. Actually, one of the joint ventures we started, we ended up like gifting the company back to them because it was like, we're not working on it, you're not working on it, like we're not kind of aligned on this, so therefore it's cool, you have it with our blessing. And then the other one, they ended up gifting it to us with exactly the same principle. And that's ultimately because both of them kind of reached a stage where it was like, we know that this could work if, and then this set of circumstances. And then invariably, because we perhaps hadn't been as intentional at the start, that kind of, if we all did this, was stuff that we weren't aligned on. And then we could see that the blocker to the next stage was very clear.
Yeah, so those are the 2 software-based ones, because the other one that was kind of a joint venture we'll come on to in a little bit later. One was like a marketplace platform, and one was more of a SaaS that kind of just did something quite simple. But the thing that was interesting about those is they both like did make money. They both did, and I still to this day maintain that both of those businesses could have been successful had they had the right tech behind them. One of them, the tech was kind of not so great, and that was one of the problems. Ultimately, it kept needing more and more development, and ultimately that side of the venture didn't want to keep committing more and more. But we'd seen that it was a viable business. I wouldn't say we got to product market fit, but we were very close to I'd say we'd got proof of concept. But then the other one was like, it got to a point where it was a minimum viable product, or so we thought, revenue generating, but ultimately it probably did need more features to be a genuine viable product and to find product market fit. And at that time, the other guys didn't want to pursue it, and that's why that ended. But it's of course in both of those examples we can say, oh, it was the other guys messed up, and it was like the tech's problem. But ultimately, especially in the second one, if they'd seen more signs of growth and more revenue, which was probably on our side, then they would have been more motivated to continue. And the fact that they probably didn't see more needle moving action on our side was because we'd got an agency to run. It really is. And we know friends that have started joint ventures, 3-way ventures, etc. And it's all been like, oh, look at the potential. This person brings that, this person brings that, this person brings that. But it's ultimately, but it's not their full-time thing. They've got something else. They're never going to jeopardize their main thing, their main cash cow, to do this other venture where they only own 25%, 30%, 50%. And for that joint venture to be the main thing, and ultimately never, in our experience, has worked out unless it's like a real full team effort, 100% committed.
Right now, if we were thinking about a joint venture again, I would take you for a long walk and I'd be like, what do we want out of this? What's best case scenario here? What's worst case scenario here? What are our intentions? What are the other people's intentions? Would have a long, extensive chat with them about inputs, outputs, like just, and it doesn't need to be formal. Like you don't need to get lawyers involved. It's just like a getting real. What do you want? What do we want? How could this work? And then I would have 2 things I would definitely do before starting any joint venture is test demand before building anything, and just like a landing page with a sign-up form that you run some ads to and you test some stuff just to see, because it's so like you could commit to putting in like $1,000 and they could put in $1,000 and you could run some ads and that's like a thing that you do, but the cost and the opportunity cost could be so high without doing that. And then the second thing is the opportunity cost. Like if I think, okay, so to make this a success, based on the idea that I'd never want to underestimate the intensity required to do something well. Based on the intensity required to do this well, what is the cost of that? And it might not even be from the main business. It might be from like health and fitness. It might be from your relationship. It might be from your free time. Like there's going to be a cost somewhere. You have to steal the time from somewhere. So where are you prepared to take it from? Yeah, there's always a big caution around joint ventures, but some of them can work amazingly, but it's just like, go forward carefully.
I think what you said about trying to sell something before you build it goes for any venture, not even just a side project, but anything. Test, because you might realize that actually there's a few iterations you can make to what will be the product to actually make it really sell. And then you don't have to kind of pivot having already spent 100 grand building the MVP to realize that you need to spend another 50 grand to change it. So I think that's valuable in itself, but I think because the joint venture thing is more tricky, it also gives you a chance to see how you work together. Like in that, just even in that testing phase, you will start to see, oh, what do they think is successful? What do they think is worth their time? Hang on, we had a call scheduled and they've rearranged it because something happened. Like, I think just having some small project, even if it's literally just to like test the market, test some marketing channels, gives you an opportunity to see what actually working with someone long term might be like.
You can even just like go to an escape room with them.
Yeah.
And see how they handle it and see how they crack under pressure, and then be like, are these people we want to start a business with?
Totally. Because the other opportunity cost is you've got a friendship with people, and that can potentially be really strained. It can also mean that you kind of maybe overestimate people's ability, and you kind of you overestimate how good they are to actually work with, when actually they might be like real nauseous to work with. And so it gives you the opportunity just to see all those sides, because you also don't want to end up falling out with friends because you actually get on for loads of different reasons, but you just don't work together very well. And that's a bad reason to like fall out with people, given that the idea is because you wanted to make a load of money from a joint venture, but ultimately you maybe didn't, and you lost some friends as well. So the downside of a joint venture can also be quite high.
The fifth way that we have made/lost money, we're going to talk about the Clever Tykes book. So this one's kind of interesting because I would say, in my notes I've written, we bumbled into this, and I guess we kind of did, because at some point we were on some holiday a couple of years into running the agency, and this was around the time that I was starting to think, how come I started a business at 22 and all my friends work for consultancies in London, and that's just what they do, and they would never think in a million years that they could start a business. And through various routes of research, we realised that it was because my mom was self-employed. And so from when I was about 15, I had like a entrepreneurial role model, because I saw my mom winning clients, going to networking events, writing proposals, doing all that stuff. So to me, it was very normal. And it was, the idea of starting my own business was not a big step at all. It was just like, I could do this. So when we realised that that's actually a pattern that shows up, that if a kid grows up with entrepreneurial parents, they're up to 80% more likely to be self-employed themselves when they grow up, we decided that we were going to go on this mission to change the world and to write entrepreneurial role models into storybooks. And so we don't have kids. We don't know anything really about children's literature other than we were once children who read books. But we decided that we were going to create these characters. They were going to be amazing, and we were going to get these books written, and we were going to get them illustrated, and we were going to start selling them.
I mean, this was also before you'd started writing like professionally and written any books as well. So these were like basically the first books we'd ever tried to write.
So yeah, we continued to bumble through this. So we wrote the books. We got help writing the books. We had like a co-author. We got the books illustrated. We got the books created. You spent hours and hours figuring out Amazon, like the way of creating an ebook on Amazon, which was not the same as it is now.
It's so easy
like
now.
Horrible.
Just upload a PDF and you're good. Like back then, it was really hard to sort this out, and also the printing as well. We weren't doing print on demand. We've moved to that since.
Yeah.
But I was going to see an actual printer to print out kind of samples before. And also this is because they were kind of like edutainment, they were educational, they were fiction books, they are fiction books, but they had a very strong educational element to them. It was also working with teachers and parents and kind of schools to an extent on crafting the product, what the offer was, how did we actually get schools interested in buying the products, which is books and also teaching resources to go with it. And like it really was at the intersection of such slow moving industries. Like publishing is a really slow industry and we ultimately just self-published those books anyway. But then you're trying to get into that the book, and it's not just the publishing, but also trying to get into stockists and book buyers is another element. Super slow moving. Like the book buyer agencies are like hundreds of years old, and then trying to get involved with schools and education, and schools who are trying to fit a bazillion things into their overpacked curriculum, and trying to convince them that, you know, enterprise education is really important, because we were inspiring these kids to be entrepreneurial. And of course, these teachers who are generally, like, they are by their own admission not entrepreneurial at all, had no exposure to entrepreneurship. The last thing they want is for the students to be like starting businesses, selling sweets in the playground, etc. And then also there was a little bit of like kind of political like lobbying on our side as well, like trying to get support from local government and big government, and getting backing from people who have some weight in the scene, I guess. But they're all just like really institutionalized areas, and we were trying to like crack this as just like these two like young people who've never written books, never had kids, like aren't teachers. Like we're trying to just revolutionize everything.
So I think we cracked this, but in a very different way. So when we tried to do what everyone else was doing, which was get into stockists, sell on Amazon. Yeah, to be fair, they still sell on Amazon, and we did that, but that was more like, you don't really have to do that actively. But when we did the kind of get into stockists, try and get sort of schools to buy lots of them, and did all the regular stuff, it ultimately would have taken a lot more time and effort than we had available to be able to make that success. The thing that did work kind of really well was we decided that because of all the things that Ben said around, we don't have kids, we're not authors, we're not a kind of known brand, we decided that we were going to really play on the enterprise education side of things, and the fact that the books were this tool for social mobility. And so we like took the Clever Tykes books to government, and we wrote letters to MPs. I managed to go to Downing Street like 3 times in 2 weeks, like just to see different MPs and to be involved in different initiatives. And then it meant that through doing that, through getting on with people, and through them kind of wanting to help and wanting to support the cause, we ended up getting written into this government report as a recommendation to primary schools to take the books. And so the next thing that we did after that, after we had all these kind of logos on the website and like the government-backed kind of stuff, which we felt like was important at the time, the next thing that we did was decided that we were going to go down the sponsorship route. And I guess part of this was because through the agency and through the kind of clients that we got, we were very comfortable selling things for like thousands and thousands every month. And when you're selling books that are like £5.99 each, it's like a whole different, it reserves a different space in your head. And we weren't really experienced in that kind of selling. So we put together these packages that were like thousands and thousands to buy for a bunch of books and teaching resources and other stuff that we created. And we started trying to find banks, airlines, supermarkets that would sponsor like a kind of cluster of schools near to where they were based. And we got like 2 or 3 of these signed at maybe like the 4 or 5K level. And then we figured out that to reach this goal that we had in mind which was to put them in every primary school in the United Kingdom, which is 24,000 primary schools. If we were doing like kind of 10 or so at a time, it was going to take us freaking ages. And each one that we sold required meeting after meeting, proposal, getting it kind of green lighted through all the like compliance departments, and we had to send them samples and everything. It took freaking ages. So then we hatched this bigger plan, and that was to find one sponsor to sign a deal to put the books in every single primary school in the UK through physical books, a digital platform, and teaching resources that were delivered to the school they could sign up and they could access. And that all we had to do was to find that one person who could make this happen. So that became like the new challenge. We had this one goal, and we just knew that that person existed somewhere. We just had to find them. And
we did.
And we did. So the strategy for that was very similar to a lot of the other stuff we've mentioned. It was literally just meet people, tell them about what we were doing. Don't meet them with the goal to sell to them, but meet them just with the goal of kind of selling through them. Similar to networking. You're just meeting people, getting them excited, getting them in your reality distortion field about this big vision that you've got that's going to change the world. And then invariably what happened was you got on with them. They mentioned you to someone else, who mentioned you to someone else. And as it happened, Sophie mentioned us to Henry mentioned us to Craig mentioned us to Martin, and Martin happened to be the head of like basically enterprise education at Lloyds Banking Group, who was able to sign the deal to get the books in all 24,000 primary schools in the UK in one fell swoop. And that was super cool. At the time, that was probably the biggest deal we'd ever done.
Yes, 100%.
And then the cool thing that came from that was like, once we'd got that signed, we went to town on promoting that. The one thing to mention actually is all that government stuff we'd done really matched up with that, because Lloyds Banking Group wanted to be seen to be in line with the kind of best interests of the UK people. But when that was done, we went to town on the promotion of that. So we put press releases out there. We spoke to all the journalists we knew. We made it a real big thing. And that was actually the thing that led to us being listed on the Forbes 30 under 30, because a friend who we had started one of the joint ventures with put us forward for that and mentioned this project, and then that got the space.
And someone else had nominated us for it as well, I think.
Yeah.
Another person, which was useful. So I think a couple of the key learnings there were that big national deal, probably there was as much due diligence and bureaucracy involved with that as selling any one of the local deals.
Yeah.
So
it's lonely at the top.
Yeah, and that's the second point, that when you're shooting for the bigger deals, like people aren't going for them, like, or far fewer. With the local deals, you'd got so many like local businesses or local charities, community interest companies, all this kind of stuff, applying for these small pots of money. Even local schools themselves might be going for these community grants, or like if a bank or an airline or a supermarket has like this like local fund, like so many people are applying. And when you go above that, there are far fewer causes that are applying for these bigger budgets. And and that was the thing that basically made this happen. Like we thought this might, it could have been a thing that never happened, right? And it was a thing that actually happened more seamlessly than so many of the other things we'd actually tried.
But that, and even that, you just reminded me of that pots of money thing. It's like when we were going for the grants and the different things that were like £5,000, it's like they are pots and you're fighting other people for the pots, and you're like, how do we get this one? How do we get that one? It's that freaking word pots. But then when we went for the big deal, like it wasn't a pot. We made the deal, we made the proposal, we made the plan, and then we found someone who didn't even necessarily have like a budget for this thing. It was like he just loved it. He got behind it. Our passion project became his passion project, and he just just moved the world to make it happen. And I remember that we were actually talking about the postage at one point, because when we sent the books, we also sent a letter to every school to say, like, these have been gifted to you from Lloyds Banking Group and Clever Tykes, and this is what you can do with them, and this is what they're designed to achieve, and this is how you can use them, this is how you access the portal, etc. And just sending those books and those letters to 24,000 primary schools, I think it was over like £80,000 to do that. And so we were like, okay, so there's the deal that's the actual you buying the books from the portal, but we've also got this kind of postage thing. Like, we weren't really sure how to charge that. Like, what do we do? And Martin, the guy who went for it, was just like, yeah, I can lose that. Like, I'll sort it out. I'll put that through a different department, or I'll do something. And it feels like when you're so passionate about something and you have the plan, other people are just like galvanized to join up and to make it happen as well. Yes. That was super cool.
It's not like applying for a pot. It's like creating a pot. Find the person with enough power and remit who can just like create the pot. And because
the pots don't exist. It's just, you have to just be like, no, I'm making my own.
And also when you're working with companies as big as a banking group, like the budgets are just like on a completely different scale to other companies, and so it's easy for them to lose or rather absorb certain costs, because the business case for them is so strong as well. They've got branded books in 24,000 schools. That's a really solid business case for those guys, and I think that's another thing. It wasn't like, it wasn't just like, give all these kids role models. That's the big headline. But it's also, but you can also get your brand in front of all these kids who probably haven't opened a bank account just yet. And there's got to be other layers that actually give someone a monetary value on their investment, ideally.
Number 6, I'm going to do super, super fast because it's just a silly one. But we started a t-shirt company called Get Stoic. It was selling Stoicism related t-shirts. They were they were really freaking good. But we had no qualifications to start a t-shirt company. We'd never done dropshipping before. We decided that it would be fun. We hired a designer to create some designs. We maybe started it as a joint venture as well. And we didn't have a plan. We just thought it was fun. But main lesson is, do not underestimate the intensity required to do something well. We sold a bunch of t-shirts. We had an Instagram account that we sold them through. But ultimately it was just a thing that took away from the other stuff that we were doing in terms of energy and time and money. And it would have been so much better for us just to create our own t-shirts and wear them and not turn it into a business.
It was a total shiny object syndrome. We were all into kind of Stoicism, the kind of philosophy at the time. There wasn't really much Stoicism merch out there. It was a print on demand. You had drop shipping things. So there's no upfront costs in terms of actually printing things. And it was a bit of fun. Another business that made money and probably could have been a really big thing if it took a really intentional marketing effort. We'd started to get some of the people that bought the t-shirts, they were sharing them online without even asking, and that was creating interest. It could have been a big brand, but if it's not your main thing, it's always going to fall down the pecking order for us and the guys that we initially started it with. This is another example of a business that they gifted to us. And then ultimately we sold it. We sold it. But we sold it. It became our first business exit, and it was a 3-figure exit. Not really many people talk about 3-figure exits, but there you go. That was ours. And actually the person who bought it ended up then being a client of Coach Fox, which is our business now. So that's quite cool. It's even though it was just a very quick transaction, it's still about the people. So, okay, that was number 6. So next one is books, more books, and also writing in general, because I have a Forbes column, and that's another one of the ways that we make money. So books, the first foray into books was that we self-published a series of books called 50 Great Ideas, and we had LinkedIn for Business, Instagram for Business, Twitter for Business, Facebook,
all
SEO.
Of them. SEO, there was 6, and so they were such basic, simple, very effective books. And the sole goal of these books that we had on Amazon was to gift them to clients who would gift them to potential clients who would then become clients of our agency. And that was all with a view to being on their coffee tables, being in their offices, having a reason to get in touch, because we were all in the kind of high touch sales arena. So it was we didn't want to just be following people up and be like, hey, do you want to work with us? We wanted to be like, hey, we're going to send you a book. And then you kind of attract and magnetize people in more than having to do the chasing and the following up that we didn't really want to do.
And it was positioning as well, right? It's, we are the experts. We've written the books on it. If you want to read the books to see our expertise, and look, you can take them, you can do it yourself if you want, or you can pay the real experts whose knowledge is continuing to evolve and upgrade to do it as well. So I think it's one of those things that it was a venture in itself, but it was really supporting the agency.
100%. And then one thing that happened that was really cool from that is that the book that was 50 Great Ideas Instagram for Business was selling on Amazon. I think that probably sold the best out of all of them.
SEO, I think. The SEO one's good.
It is good. It's probably very relevant. Anyway. But the Instagram one got picked up by a publisher called Quarto, who are a really big publisher. And I got an email to say, hey, we want you to write us a book about Instagram. And this was a really cool thing, because it's almost like publishers are notoriously hard to get in front of, and you will probably hear people being like, how do you get a publisher, and how do you follow them up and write a proposal and that kind of stuff. But this publisher pitched me, and it was all based on having already written a book on that topic. So Alice at that publisher, she had a project, and that was to find an author to write the book that they already had in mind. And when she was researching, she found 50 Great Ideas Instagram for Business, and she said, hey, we want you to write this book called Instagram Rules. And so that then we got an advance, and then wrote the book. And actually I didn't really like that process, because it felt like having a boss, and everything I'd done so far meant I didn't have a boss. But this was you have a deadline, it has to fit our creative brief, we will edit it, and we will change things we don't like. But that ended up being a book that then we wrote, and then it won.
I'm glad you said we, because your name is on it, but I did do some of the research.
I know,
especially in that.
yeah.
It was good.
But it was a slog. Do you remember? We were in Miami and it was just like, we need to write this book.
Oh, it was a slog. And also it's not like, with tech, like there's features that kind of come and go and you're like, oh yeah, there's this cool feature. And you say, oh no, they've just stopped using that feature, or they've just released this feature. Oh, we better include that. But it was a stunning book. Like it really is a fantastic book.
And I think that's why it won. It won best marketing book at the Business Book Awards of 2021, maybe. But yeah, it's partly because it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous book. It still sells now. I think it's been translated into like 8 languages, and we see it in shops all over the world. So that's really cool. The publisher route is kind of magical. I think that another one to talk about is 10-year career, because that's also the publisher route.
Yeah. Same.
Were you going to say how to raise entrepreneurial kids?
No, I wasn't crack on with that. No, I was thinking more about like the actual making money from it. And I think it's worth mentioning how it works with a publisher. Like you get an advance up front. So they're like, yes, we're going to sell some books here. So they pay you in advance, depending on how big a profile you have, how many books they think you are going to be able to sell. So it could be 4 figures, 5 figures, even 6 figures if you've got a big enough online profile. And then you make royalties on sales once that advance has been covered. And I think in general, most books tend not to cover their advance. So most people, they get the advance, they write the book, or in our case, you'd already written the book. For 10-year career, you'd already written the book. But often they don't see anything over and above that. And I think it's that people obviously really make the money when they're kind of the international bestsellers. They're translated into, 20, 30 languages, and they're just selling millions of copies like every day. Like the Atomic Habits type size books.
It's really extremist, Dan. So as part of that process, often, well, if a publisher approaches you, they'll kind of pitch you. But normally the process is that you write a book proposal, and that book proposal is where you, I guess, present your case for how you are going to sell as many books as possible for that publisher, because they're basically gambling. They're placing bets on authors, believing or not believing them based on their proposal, and then it's up to you pretty much to do most of the marketing to then sell as many copies as you say you're going to sell. I think that the publishing route, I think, is kind of magic if you're looking to make as much impact as possible, because it's almost like the unknown is so big. Like we'll see our books in random places, in airports, in bookshops, all over the world, because your publisher's sorted the distribution. With self-publishing, that probably isn't going to happen, but you keep a lot more of the proceeds.
I was thinking it's interesting that with Instagram rules, they pitched you. With 10-year career, you pitched them, but you'd already written the book, which is a different route. We know a few people that pitch. They're like, yep, this with a book proposal, and then they have to go and write the book, and by the time they've written the book, they've decided they wanted to write a different book. So
and they hate the book.
I liked the way you did it. But I think, there was lots of things in the editing process that I think is fascinating, but I think that's probably for a different video. But we've also gone down the hybrid route, which is where they kind of do the typesetting and they do the printing and distribution of the book, but not all the marketing, and you get a bigger cut of the royalties, but you don't get an advance, I think, if I'm correct. And then self-publishing is obviously a really popular way of doing it, because you make far more money on each sale of the book. You can sell directly from Amazon. There are other challenges with it, with self-publishing. It's just a lot less kudos, really, because anyone can self-publish a book. There's no editorial kind of stringency there. And so some self-published books are going to be like really bad. But there is more there. And I know of people that have got huge, mailing lists and big profiles, and like, I don't need a publisher to help me with this. I'm going to basically sell my book, which is either just basically a PDF, or they do some kind of print on demand type thing. And they take, 95%, profit margin on that.
But then on the flip side, if you have got a big audience and you don't need the cash, you want to just you want to buy your own lottery ticket, then I'd be like, get a publisher. Right. Hybrid approach, I think, can be depending on how you see it, it can be the worst of both worlds or the best of both worlds. I think it's really good. We use Rethink Press for How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids, which is a different book. And it's also got a playbook, and they've looked after translation rights. I think it's now in like 7 or 8 different languages. We get new ones through all the time, me and my co-author. And that process was cool because it's like, yeah, you write it. Of course, you always have to, the basis for all of this is you write an exceptional book, but then they took care of a lot of it after that. It's probably not going to be seen in Stockist because that's not the hybrid publishers. That's not always their specialty, but it can be pretty cool. And then, 10-year career. I think I wrote that book before writing the proposal and before going out to publishers because of the experience with Instagram rules of like having this deadline for creativity, which kind of sucked, and not wanting to do that again. But also understanding that you as the author, as the creator, you have a lot more power than you give yourself credit for. And maybe it was also the Instagram rules process of being pitched to by a publisher that meant that when I went out to get a publisher for 10-year career, I wasn't like, please pick me. It was more like, I've got this book. It's amazing. It's going to sell loads. Who am I going to choose from? Which then led to us getting a really big, cool publisher from that.
So you also write for Forbes?
I do, yes. And that's a setup where they pay all their contributors per post, and you have to do a minimum of 5 a month, but if you start getting a certain number of traffic of like hits to your articles, then you qualify for traffic payments. So then you get paid basically per view and per repeat view and per person who signs up for Forbes. The reason I got that gig was through being on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, going to an event. They were just starting the contributor platform, and it's another relationship story because I met who was going to be the editor of this platform at the event, and then she said, hey, yeah, we'll be looking for authors or we'll be looking for contributors, and I was like, I want this. So then I followed her up until they let me be a contributor, and this was maybe 7 years ago now. The Forbes writing stuff is only as good as the effort you put in. Everything hinges on how good your title is, you building up a reader base, and just basically being exceptional. You have to be. You can't just put, like, the internet's so full of mediocre content, you can't just put that stuff out. But why that project in particular is exciting as a way of making money, or just anything where you're paid per view, is similar to the restaurant story. Because the ongoing how much you get paid is not that interesting, because it's just like, okay, so input, output, paid by the article. But the idea that you could do something differently or find a new way forward and then qualify for like a kind of payment structure that is nothing to do with your time is very interesting. So I feel like wherever there's a way of finding that little, here's what you get for being good route in, is the way to make money, basically.
Yeah, cool. Done?
Yeah. So property is next.
Yeah, property. And I think property is kind of like the way that we've invested cash that we've made through the agency, through the Clever Tykes book deal. And I think that's partly a bit of a legacy thing. Like, we bought our own flat that we lived in, and then we thought when we wanted to move apartments, we rented it out, for example. And it's also the idea that, you know, property is always going up in value and it's a really safe bet. And I think we kind of bought into that idea, but it is, for us, it has been a really good way of making money. And I think see the property as a similar way as you might invest spare cash in stocks or cryptocurrency. But in general, if you're just trying to keep money in stocks over a period of years, same with cryptocurrency, because you think that's just going to go up, property is definitely a way of making cash flow if you're renting property out. And that's basically how we did it. And so we put extra cash into properties, accumulated a number of properties in the Birmingham area, and that pays us every month. So the rents come in, and we have, you know, a couple of them have mortgages, and obviously that money goes out. But it is cash positive, and it's just a very low risk way of generating income. It's a good hedge against inflation, and if house prices go up, then great, because those are assets that we own that go up in value. It's kind of boring, but it's one of the most passive ways of making money, because we have our properties looked after by an agent, and they literally deal with tenants moving in, out, any maintenance issues. It's just done. And though, you know, that as a group of assets just goes up in value, and if at any point we wanted to sell, that's just the cash coming in. But at the moment, it's just cash every month and low risk, kind of passive income really, and it's just one of the ways that we make money, and it's a good solid income.
But it's just boring.
It's just boring. Yes.
To it.
There's really not much more to say about it.
If you make cash, if you've got spare cash, buy properties and then don't think about it, and then it's just there. Like it's one way of doing it. I feel like friends who we speak to about how they invest, it's like is it called the barbell strategy, where some of your stuff's like high risk, high reward, high return, but some of it's just like freaking boring. And having the freaking boring way of doing things might be like, it depends on your risk tolerance, but it might be something that is for you.
Yeah, and you can make it more interesting if you want with property. Like people kind of create the HMOs, the multiple occupancy thing. I think that's kind of less unpopular now, but also like setting it up to be Airbnb. And there's definitely ways of making property more interesting than the way we make it. You can keep leveraging and like borrowing and accumulate loads of property where you're heavily leveraged against it. Not the way we've done it. We've done it boring because everything else that we do is kind of not boring. That's a boring thing.
It's like if you want your property to be a part-time job, or if you want to spend time on it, then you could probably do stuff that means that it adds value over and above that. But if you've got better things to do, then keep it boring.
Keep it boring.
So onto something not boring is SaaS, software. This is what we're doing now. We run a company together called Coachbox, and we make AI coaches based on real coaches and real consultants. I'm head of people, Ben's head of product, and we run that together. We've had it for about 2 years. We started the business after a couple of years chilling out after we sold the agency, figuring out what to do, coming up with business ideas, not moving forward with anything until we saw the one. A couple of points to make on Coachbox, because I think the most interesting thing to us is how different it is from agency. And that's because when we had an agency, our clients were worth thousands and thousands every month, but now our customers they pay $99 a month, and there's upsells and other stuff that goes on, but the core product is $99 a month. And so for me, this was such a big thing to get my head around, because it's just different. It's just the customers kind of are in a different category of running a business. And so I think at first I thought that I'd bring this agency baggage to software, and I would be over-servicing people, giving too much of time, effort, everything, and that would actually be a really good thing, a really bad thing. But I did realize that it is actually a really good thing, because if you can apply agency care to a software business, then people just really appreciate it. It's like I have Q&As every single week with our customers, and they don't expect it at all. So they're always like, this is amazing. Thank you so much for giving your time, because most software companies don't do that. Most software that you sign up to, you can't speak to the founder. So it's like, how do we take this thing that's just this thing that people pay for per month, that there's a platform that they use, that they're looked after on the platform. How do we take that and involve the people side so that it becomes like a competitive advantage? And I feel like community is a big part of that.
But it's also a fantastic way of making the product better. It's really easy to think of like SaaS as not being a people business, and of course it doesn't have to be. But the people using your software are people, and they've got challenges and they've got ambitions and they've got problems that they're literally using your product to solve. And the more time you speak to them and get to know them and understand their issues, the better the product is. And ultimately as a SaaS, it's the strength of your product and the amount of value you're delivering as to how successful that product is going to be. And I think we've learned a hell of a lot from that. I think something that's different about our product compared with other SaaS is potentially, because we're in the AI space, it's not something that you can kind of just build and then like just tweak ongoing. This is something that we're continually improving, like month to month. The product is getting better and better and better, coinciding with like just AI capabilities getting better and better. There's definitely softwares out there that are simpler. It does something and it can do that function. And until something, really changes, or a competitor comes out and does something way better, you don't need to make wholesale changes to it. You can make incremental improvements, and actually the development costs can be low. A lot of SaaSes are 1 or 2 person teams where one of the founders is a developer, which keeps the costs incredibly low, other than time. That's not our business. That's not how we are making money from it. We're not kind of making money and just taking it out of the business. It's investing in the tech. So that's a slightly different model, because for us, this SaaS is the primary goal is to be another exit, as opposed to it to make money. And of course it does make money, and it will make money. But the primary goal is to grow it, to scale it, to then have a significant exit.
Agency and SaaS is also so different because...
Agency and... So you said that so fast. Agency and SaaS is so different.
I feel like with an agency, we would just think of something that we wanted to sell, and then we would like, poof, we've sold it. Because you speak to someone about it and you say, hey, yeah, we've got this offer. But then SaaS is not really like that. So it feels like it moves a lot slower. But then it feels like when that flywheel starts going, or when stuff starts compounding, then it moves so much faster. And we're kind of in that stage now where it's like, oh, stuff's happening every single month and it's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you can see that exponential growth where it's like, oh, this is happening. But at the start, it felt like you speak to a lot of customers. Like we constantly, I love people and chatting to people. So it's all about, how are you using it? What do you want from us? How can we help you? What are your biggest challenges? Like just constantly quizzing customers with that. And then I talk to you, I talk to Joanna in our team, and we go for walks and we talk about how we can make the product better. Then you speak to the developers, and then we build that. But that feels like it takes a long time. And then also, because we're scaling through a $99 a month product, it feels like that takes a long time to build up. Whereas in an agency, that you could hit a really big revenue like straight away. But then once that has started moving, it's like, poof.
Yeah,
the poof moment happens later.
Yeah, the poof. Yes, it can be really slow. And we know guys who've been working on SaaSes for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's only in the last 2 years they've even made profit. And I think it also depends a little bit, like, do you want to make money fast? Like, do you want to build something super simple and then just hope the customers enjoy it and like it? Or are you like really vested and you believe in this vision? And like for us, we like believe in like what we're doing. Our customers are the people, like, we are determined to help kind of use AI moving forward, not the other way around. And so we're kind of fighting their battle with our tool, and we're in it for the long term. Like, and it's very, very different to just creating something that's meant to be a cash cow. You want to get like, 50 users that are paying you $1,000 a month, and then that's it. And that's the product. And you just hope that they stay with you for a long time. So I think there are different ways of SaaS being a thing. We're very invested in the actual project and goal.
Yeah. And I think probably the one thing that has moved the needle the most on SaaS, and potentially for all SaaSes, I don't want to speak on behalf of every single one, but I call it founder energy. The idea that if you as the founder are not behind your business, it's ultimately not going to work, because people can smell it. Like when you're not writing your sales pages with passion, you're not talking to people about your project with passion. It's like, oh yeah, there's this thing that makes me some money sometimes, or boring. But if we use our own product ourselves, we love it. It's the thing that generates us leads, sign-ups, revenue, ultimately. So therefore, we've got the founder energy behind knowing how game-changing it is, and being able to have that energy and excitement coming through when we talk to other people. I feel like that's the main thing. And I feel, for me, that comes from talking to customers, getting their energy, and then that kind of being strong back in marketing.
Yeah, I think with this one, we can't kind of say like loads about it because we haven't finished the journey on it yet. It's like it's still ongoing, and there's a Coach Fox YouTube channel, and you can just keep up with it. And there's other things more about the company, but yeah, I think it's like an ongoing one.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So final one that we want to talk about is coaching and consultancy.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one, because I think for a lot of people, yourself included, that build a profile, have some success, coaching is something that people will literally ask from you. Well, they might ask for help, and ultimately you can sell them coaching. And we know people that have like basically built that out into a business, or they do it part-time. And I guess it is ultimately going to be selling your time for money. And there are coaching business models that aren't time for money. There are scalable options with memberships, courses that obviously scale way beyond one-to-one time. But if we stick to the one-to-one time, you're selling your time for money, but compared with waitressing, compared with being a bouncer, you can charge just a lot more. You can charge, we certainly deep into 3 figures, 4 figures an hour. Coaches charge 5 figures an hour for calls, or they have, it could be $10,000 or $20,000 a month, and it's 1 or 2 calls a month, and it's a 12-month contract. So these are seriously high ticket coaching, and it's just way higher leverage on your time. And because of that, it can be a very appealing option for people that have maybe had an exit, or they're running a SaaS, they've got some spare time, they want to help people, they're getting offers for coaching. It's like, I'll pay you $2,000, $3,000 for a call every month. It's it's an easy thing to get into by default, I think, but it's also quite lucrative.
I think there's a couple of reasons I do it, but also don't do it lots. My goal is to have 2 or 3 calls a month, and that's why. So I use Intro. It's a platform that you can set up on, and you set an hourly rate. It's at $1,500 right now, but I up it with demand. So the idea is I want 2 or 3 a month, and if it's going to be more than that, then I'm going to put the price up. But there's a number of different ways of doing it. But I feel like being intentional about that and being what do I want? How many of these do I want a month? Then dictates the price, and then dictates how often you increase it. But partly the reason I do it is because as I'm building my online stuff, people just ask for help more often, and you just can't. There's not enough time to help everyone that wants help. So therefore, it's quite a simple way of being I only have a couple of spaces a month for this, but this is my link if you want to do that. Easy way of helping people. But then also I get quite a lot from the actual calls. It gives me a ton of ideas for articles. It helps me understand my audience even more because they're pouring their hearts out to me, wanting help with stuff. And then I feel keeps you kind of in touch with what people are struggling with and what they're wanting, and is quite enjoyable. But at the same time, I know that I have to cap it because I don't want to ultimately be a coach consultant because I'm building a business, and I'm still aware of the opportunity cost of it. A friend that's in mind is building a $1 million business, gets asked for consultancy all the time, and it's literally not worth his time because every hour he puts into being paid by the hour is an hour that is taken away from something else. And even if that's just him chilling out, going for a walk, having a think, that is costly because his brain is so big. And so I've kind of got him in mind when I'm thinking about it, and I'm do I want to be booked by the hour? And often the answer is no, so I try and kind of cap it.
It's one of these perfect examples of your attitude towards money and your money beliefs will dictate how much you do this. Because I know that some people are $1,000 an hour, I could never turn down that. If they've come from a background where $1,000 is a lot and $1,000 an hour is an unbelievable rate of pay, they could get themselves just completely booked up. And sure, they'll be making a lot of money in the here and now, but actually if they're working on a SaaS that they could exit for 100 million, it's totally costing them. And you can always say, but I like helping people. I get a lot from them, but that's where you just need that extra layer of self-awareness to be actually, is this the right thing? Because you also, and we obviously work with a lot of coaches as well, there is a mental overhead. You think about the coaches a lot, so you think about the clients a lot, and you come off a call and you're wow, they're really having a tough time with it right now. Or you've got a call coming up and you're thinking about, actually, should I ask this or should I ask that? So there's definitely mental overheads. It's not as strict as an hourly rate. But also equally, it's a good way of making cash.
The coaching as well for us came from selling an agency. The idea is that you do something cool, and then other people want to find out how you did that cool thing. So it was selling an agency, and then it was people saying, "How did you sell your agency?" And then it was working out how to look after agency owners and kind of help them in a way that didn't cost too much time, because we were traveling in between businesses, and we were in New Zealand, we were in different places, and it was there's no physical, our calendars don't even align or overlap. So that the offer first actually wasn't even that many calls, it was voice note coaching. It was a back and forth. People would send me voice notes, I would send them back, and then I would help them sell their agency like that. And that's the thing that turned into what was the original model, business model for CoachRocks, which then turned into making AI coaches after that. But there's a number of different ways of helping people, and you just basically have to find the way that works for you and works for them. But I would start with the way that works for you, so that you have the control over your time and your schedule.
Sounds good.
I think I think we are, other than you mentioned money beliefs, and I just want to kind of end on money beliefs because this is so important. So everyone has money beliefs that they carry around with them, that they will have from childhood. You probably have money beliefs you don't even know about. And a really good way of finding them out is if I said to you, money is, what is the first word that comes into your head? Because the first word that comes into your head might be, money is great, money is fun. What are you thinking what your first word was?
Fun probably is the thing that comes into my head.
Or like, but it might be. It
wouldn't have been always though.
It might be, money is not for people like me, or money doesn't grow on trees, or money is for greedy people, or something like, but whatever that is, that dictates everything. And so it's like, whether you think $1,000 is a lot of money or a little money will depend on your beliefs and your references and where you are in your business. But my goal always is to be like abundance, 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 thinking there's an infinite amount of money. It's easy to make money. I can get a job easily. I can make money easily in my business. I'm creating something of value. I can always find people that will buy it. The money will never run out. Like, it's almost these kind of positive affirmations around money that I'm like, this is what I want to surround myself with. So I try very hard to kind of check myself if I find myself saying something that's kind of a scarcity belief.
Yeah, 100%.
Money's fun.
Money's fun. And that was a foray into our, I don't know, the past 12, maybe even 15 years of making money or not making money. And it'd be really interesting to know from you guys what resonated, if you've had any similar experience with making or losing money. And I think we will catch you in the next one.
That was the 5th in the series of Chats with Ben, where we covered the top 10 ways we have made or lost money. Really hope you enjoyed that episode. Definitely drop us a comment. Let us know which parts resonated with you. If you liked the video, give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos on similar topics. And we will see you in the next one.